Strategic event planning before anything else. Motivational speaker, author, and radio announcer Earl Nightingale once said, "All you need is the plan, the roadmap, and the courage to press on to your destination." What follows are the groups of strategic steps in order of development and implementation that make up your plan. If you use the outline in this presentation for your event plans and implement each phase in order, your event blueprint should be quite solid. As you develop the plan, create a master timeline checklist, week by week, and plug in each element of the plan that needs to be executed and when. Modify the timeline every time you modify the plan so that no detail slips through the cracks and you can easily monitor what has and has not been completed on an ongoing basis. Remember that you must have a written plan as the very first step in your risk management process. Why? Because if something happens that prevents you from continuing to manage the event, your client will need to fill your shoes with another event manager who can pick up where you left off and follow the plan to fruition. Phase 1, the big picture. In this phase, you'll put the major players in place and determine the vision and goals for the event. Vision. The first step of plan development is to define the vision of the event in writing. The event vision includes, but is not limited to, event type, event style, and identifying the attendees. While you are developing the vision, also create a wish list of elements with which you and your client hope to augment the fundamental requirements. Goals. There should be an overarching goal for the event. For an example, an annual general meeting may have the overall goal of bringing together management staff and volunteers of a nonprofit for goal setting for the next fiscal year. This same event may also have a dozen or so defined sub-goals, such as establishing the next year's budget, establishing a number of new committees, hosting the annual board of directors meeting, etc. These goals should all be specified in writing in the plan, as they are a checklist of must-dos in the planning process. Scope of the event. The scope is both the size and participants, speakers, staff, etc., as well as the number of days required to fulfill the event goals, and the size and features of the facility or facilities required. Environment. Environmental considerations are twofold and need to be determined early. First, determine what the weather will be like at the time of year and how that guides your purpose-based destination selection. Climate affects everything from whether part or all of the event can occur outdoors to travel problems for attendees. Second, develop your green event plan. Many countries and states are beginning to require events to implement environmentally friendly practices. Going green for events is also the right thing to do. Your green policy will influence your destination and venue choice and needs to be determined early in the planning stage. Management. Although you do not need to flesh out all your staffing needs at this point, you should determine your management level players and get them in place. These team players may include a financial manager, legal professional, executive assistant, etc. The key players need to be scheduled for all meetings throughout the event evolution. Consultants. If your event will take place overseas, you may need to retain a customs broker. If the event isn't going to take place locally, it's wise to contract the services of a destination management consultant. You may also need a graphic designer, public relations firm, etc. Try to identify these needs up front and begin negotiations with the appropriate providers. Committees. If you are going to use committees of staff and/or volunteers to take ownership of certain elements of the event, it is important to create and staff them at the beginning, as they should be part of every planning and implementation meeting. Budget overview. Although you may not have an itemized budget at the onset, this is the time to create the budget overview, which should include total operating reserve, estimated overall costs, and any shortage or overage. Outline the detailed budget at this time so you can plug in actual numbers as they are confirmed. Phase 2, location and time frame. Now you are ready to find the place to fulfill the event vision and goals and plan some of the major expense details of the event. Destination. From the previous phase, you will have developed a list of venue and destination requirements. During this part of the plan, you need to identify primary and backup location, not the venue itself, but the town or community where the venue will be located. The plan should itemize all the pros and cons of both destinations, number of viable facilities, transportation issues for attendees, and so on. Venue. Once you've identified and approved a primary and backup destination, identify a venue or venues at each that can accommodate every single requirement defined in Phase 1. During this process, you'll develop the checklist of requirements to put into the request for proposal, or RFP, to the sites you've selected. As you work with venues, you will come to a point where you have chosen which one or ones you want at the finalized destination choice. Dates. Determining event dates is extremely important. First, determine how long the event will be and find out what date blocks are available at your venues. Then determine which date block with a backup block best suits your needs based on a number of considerations, including but not limited to conflicting events, holidays, climate, and weather. Transportation. The transportation plan should be in place early. In this section, outline travel plans for attendees as well as transfers at the destination. Location and transportation financials. You are now ready to plug some fairly accurate estimates of these big Phase 2 expenses into your budget. The balance you have remaining drives the decisions you make in Phase 3. Phase 3, Event Details. In this phase of the plan development, you determine and put into place all of the critical elements of the event. Agenda. Before moving forward, create a schedule for the entire event. It should include all your must-haves as well as your wish list items. Schedule speakers, sessions, entertainment, food and beverage services, meet and greets, etc. Then apply a cost estimate to each item and add the estimates to your budget. You'll finalize costs when you negotiate contracts. Just creating estimates may indicate whether you can have all or any of your wish list items. Staffing. At this stage, you need to identify your staffing needs and select and budget your staff. While working on staffing, also assign responsibilities and an accountability policy to staff members and volunteers. Speakers and presenters and entertainment. When you created the agenda, you will have penciled in your presenters and entertainers. At this point, you need to confirm with them that they will be available and add their rates to the budget. Sponsors. Develop a list of potential sponsors for the event. These may be cash or in-kind sponsors that will help you offset your costs or infuse cash into a wish list element your budget doesn't otherwise support. Ask them what they might be willing to donate and what they need as fulfillment in return. Facility Setup Blueprint. This is a time when you look at the entire layout of your facility and work with its operations staff to plan room setups, breakdowns, and changes per your agenda. Assign attendee numbers to each agenda item. Also pencil in AV needs per agenda item. Accommodations. Negotiate accommodation perks with your site manager at this time. If the site is a hotel, for example, it will likely comp you rooms or reduce room rates if the hotel is supplying food and beverage services. Determine how many rooms and other accommodations your event will require and have them set aside for your attendees and VIPs. Food and beverage. Design each food and beverage session in the plan and put in the details: menu, service style, number of attendees, location, etc. Add each service to the budget. Decorating. Based on your event vision, choose your fabrics, lighting, plants and flowers, and other decor items and factor them into the budget. Also identify and verbally confirm your vendors and suppliers. Audio-visual. Check with each presenter and entertainer to confirm their AV requirements and work with your supplier and venue staff to design room sets that will maximize AV while minimizing redundancy and the costs associated with surplus equipment. Also add AV estimates to the budget. Rentals. If you require tents, furniture, decor items, food and beverage service items, etc. and need to rent them, now is the time to list them and book them. Again, add each associated cost to the budget. Traffic flow plan. Your agenda and room setup plan should be in pretty good shape by now, so evaluate the traffic flow based on the venue layout and the agenda. Make any adjustments to the room setups or agenda as necessary to prevent bottlenecks or hallway noise while events are in session. Transportation. Every detail of transportation to and from the event and transfers at the event need to be well planned out and budgeted. If you are greeting your meeting, plan to provide bicycles or extra time for walking between sites. Registration area plan. Lay out your registration area for maximum flow and efficiency and minimal confusion. Consider issues like protection from the weather at the entrance, informational signage, and what the venue allows and can supply, etc. On-site office design. You'll need a management office, preferably very near the registration area. Work with the venue operations staff to set this up. Considerations might include a secure room with a safe if you are handling any cash, data security system, network setup, etc. Security. Determine how you will secure all your attendees' information and what physical security you may need for VIPs. Identify suppliers and add rates to the budget. Technology requirements. You may want to make the Internet available to attendees, have interactive kiosks, or incorporate specialty digital displays. Now is the time to list all the items required, who supplies them, what they cost, and when they need to be installed. Photographers and videographers. If you want to record more than audio of the event, you'll need to book photographers and/or videographers well in advance. Venue management may have recommendation for service providers who worked the venue previously with good results. Factor them into your budget's expenses. Gifts and giveaways. If you plan to give out attendee gifts, have tributes or recognition ceremonies, and want to gift your suppliers after the event, determine what's appropriate, secure suppliers, and add these items to the budget. Event details financials. At this point, your budget should be well developed and quite accurate. Double check each item to make sure the numbers recorded are correct and evaluate whether you need to acquire additional resources or eliminate expenses to balance the budget. Phase 4, Paperwork. This section of the plan outlines all of the papers you must have for the event, from contracts to permits and beyond. Budget. At this point, the budget needs to be locked in. As you place orders, sign contracts, etc., make sure the costs are close to your estimates and add the actual confirmed costs into your financials. Contracts. In this phase, you need to perform the final contract negotiations, get them signed, and make sure the suppliers and your team have signed copies on file. Agreements. It is also time to have all your presenters and performers sign final agreements indicating their schedules and final costs. Also include any special requirements they may have regarding accommodations, refreshments, dressing areas, etc. in these arrangements. Permits. Make sure you have any permits required in place. For example, you may need permits to hold a function in a public place or a Coast Guard permit for an on-the-water event. Insurance. You need to insure the event, have cancellation insurance, cover the venue and all players, etc. If you're unsure about what types of insurance you need, consult with the venue, the municipality, and an insurance provider who specializes in events. Risk management plan. Try to anticipate anything that could go wrong, from a transportation strike to a venue fire or hurricane, and have a plan in place for handling the situation. You do not want to try and respond to an act of God or other calamity without a plan, and some insurance providers require a written risk management plan for event insurance. Marketing plan. A critical part of your overall plan is the marketing plan, which outlines how you will obtain attendees. The marketing plan includes everything from invitations to ticket sales and advertising to press coverage. Shipping and receiving plan. This section of the plan defines who will be shipping what to the venue, how it needs to be received, and where it needs to be transported to and when. Make sure this is well thought out and all the pieces are in place. An author arriving at a book signing, for example, without any books, is an event breaker. Checklists. At this point, you should have all your checklists created, including the master timeline checklist, speaker info checklist, food and beverage checklist, and so on. Phase 5, Awareness and Marketing. All of these elements are part of the marketing plan introduced in Phase 4. Each needs its own sub-plan. Website. When does it go live? Who will design and manage it? Is it secure? Will it have online registration and ticket sales capabilities? All of these questions need to be answered in the marketing plan and then implemented. The website is a budget line item. Invitations. This section addresses how you will reach your intended guest list members and incite them to attend. These might be printed invitations, phone calls, emails, or even television ads. Registration form. Take time to determine what information you need from your attendees, how you will use that information, how you will keep it secure, and how the attendees will obtain the form. Marketing materials. These include everything from brochures to press kits, radio ads to billboards. Determine what mediums will reach your target audience most effectively and how to finance your materials. Press and public relations. Develop a plan for maximizing press coverage. Figure out what elements of your event, for example, the fact that it's a green paperless meeting, will broaden the event's appeal to the press. Media coverage is excellent free advertising. Advertising. Determine what, if any, advertising you will benefit from. An event open to the public, like a sporting event, is well suited to television and radio advertising. Conversely, there's no point in buying that type of advertising if your event is targeted towards a widely spread out special interest group. Ticket sales. Is there a fee for your event? How will you handle ticket sales and the revenues generated from them? Will you pre-sell the tickets, have special VIP tickets, or even hold some type of ticket-based fundraiser? If the latter, is it legal at your destination? Signage. Before you design your signage, find out what rules the venue has about sign displays. This section of the plan defines what types of signs you need, what their purposes are, how many you need to order, and what will hold them in place. Phase 6, before you go. A week or so out from the event date, review the plan, checklist, and do final confirmations. Also add some backup materials to the plan. Arrival and pre-event plan. Figure out ahead of time what you need to do on site when you arrive and before the event opens. Outline these requirements in the plan and assign appropriate staff to action items. Confirm speakers and entertainment. Do a final confirmation with all key players a week before the event. Have a list of local backup presenters just in case. Confirm contracts and point people for them. Run through a checklist of all your suppliers, make sure they are still in business and that you have all the contact information for each point person. Create a list of emergency backup suppliers as well. Make backup copies of all paperwork. Make sure you have the backup file for all the contracts, agreements, permits, etc. that will stay in the on-site office. Pack a mobile office. Duplicate all the paperwork and carry it with you. If your office supplies don't arrive or are late, you still have the plan, permits, contracts, etc. in hand and the show can go on. Phase 7, it's showtime. At this point, it's really too late to plan anything, but you won't have to because your master plan is complete, comprehensive, and you've followed it every step of the way. Why? Because, Strategic Event Planner, plan is in your job title. Implement it courageously.